In April, millions of tiny flowers spread over the Blackjack Hills and vast prairies in the Osage Territory of Oklahoma. There are Johnny Jump-Ups and Spring Beauties and Little Bluettes. The Osage writer John Joseph Matthews said that the galaxy of petals makes it look as if the gods had left confetti. In May, when coyotes howl beneath an unnervingly large moon, taller plants, such as spiderworts and black-eyed Susans, begin to creep over the tinier blooms, stealing their light and water. The necks of the smaller flowers break, and their petals flutter away. And before long, they are buried underground. This is why the Osage Indians refer to May as the time of the flower-killing moon. On May 24, 1921, Molly Burkhart, a resident of the Osage settlement town of Gray Horse, Oklahoma, began to fear that something had happened to one of her 3 sisters, Anna Brown. 34 and less than a year older than Molly, Anna had disappeared 3 days earlier. She had often gone on sprees, as her family called them, dancing and drinking with friends until dawn. But this time, one night had passed, and then another, and Anna had not shown up on Molly's front stoop as she usually did. When Anna came inside, she liked to slip off her shoes, and Molly missed the comforting sound of her moving, unhurried through the house. Instead, there was a silence as still as the plains. Molly had already lost her sister Minnie nearly 3 years earlier. Minnie's death had come with shocking speed, and though doctors had named it a peculiar wasting illness, Molly had her doubts. Minnie had been only 27 and had always been in perfect health. Like their parents, Molly and her sisters had their names inscribed on the Osage roll, which meant that they were among the registered members of the tribe. It also meant that they were worth a fortune. In the early 1870s, the Osage had been driven from their lands in Kansas onto a rocky, presumably worthless reservation in northeastern Oklahoma. Decades later, they discovered that this land was sitting above some of the largest oil deposits in the United States, and to get that oil, prospectors had to pay the Osage. In the early 20th century, each person on the tribal roll began receiving a quarterly check. The amount was initially for only a few dollars, but over time, as more oil was tapped, the payments grew into the hundreds, then the thousands, and virtually every year they received more and more, until the tribe members had collectively accumulated millions and millions of dollars. In 1923 alone, the tribe took in more than $30 million, which would be worth more than $400 million today. The Osage were considered the wealthiest people per capita in the world. Lo and behold, the New York magazine Outlook exclaimed, the Indian, instead of starving to death, enjoys a steady income that turns bankers green with envy. The public had become transfixed by the tribe's prosperity, which contradicted many of the images of American Indians that could be traced back to the brutal first contact with whites, the original sin from which the country was born. Readers were fascinated by stories about the Osage's brick mansions and chandeliers, their diamond rings and fur coats and chauffeured cars. One writer marveled at Osage girls who attended the best boarding schools and wore sumptuous French clothing. At the same time, reporters seized upon any signs of the traditional Osage way of life, which seemed to stir in the public's mind visions of wild Indians. One article noted a circle of expensive automobiles surrounding an open campfire, where the bronzed and brightly blanketed owners are cooking meat in the primitive style. Another documented a party of Osage arriving at a ceremony for their dances in a private airplane. Gray Horse was one of the reservation's oldest settlements. These outposts, including Fairfax, a larger town of nearly 1,500 people, and Pawhuska, the Osage capital, with a population of more than 6,000, seemed like fevered visions. The streets clamored with cowboys, fortune seekers, bootleggers, soothsayers, medicine men, outlaws, U.S. Marshals, New York financiers, and oil magnates. Automobiles sped along paved horse trails, the smell of fuel overwhelming the scent of the prairies. There were restaurants, advertised as cafes, and opera houses and polo grounds.